Welcome back, and many thanks for staying with News Sources, the Ladies' Night edition. Let's move on now. And as we at KTN News continue with our county corruption report, 47 counties in 47 days. Tonight on News Sources, we focus on Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero, who has rubbished the 2014-2015 Auditor General's report on the county, saying it was impractical to misappropriate 20 billion shillings. But as we have seen, no amount is impractical in this political dispensation. Can we trust this governor with Nairobi for another 5 years?
Action team, where the story or the headline is not related to the story. Because if 20 billion shillings disappeared out of an expenditure of 23 billion or a budget of 23 billion, then we wouldn't have been able to run. Because in the year 2014, 2015, we collected 11 billion shillings, and we got 12 billion from central government.
Right, so I want to take a look into that. So he says it is impractical that in that financial year, Nairobi County's revenue was 23 billion shillings. 11 was the revenue from the county and 12 billion from the national government. So he says it's impractical that they would have misappropriated 20 billion out of 20, out of 23. This kind of makes sense, don't you think, Lydia?
Well, I think it does make sense, because 20 billion just disappearing or being considered misappropriation would have really, the red light would have gone off somewhere.
It means something would have been like thoroughly off.
Yes, completely
a lot
off.
Of things
completely
thoroughly.
off. And you want to worry about the auditing, the lack of, organization of the representation of their monetary figures. You need to wonder, how are they representing these things?
Right.
Because they seem to come up later with all these problems that didn't seem to be a problem. Okay, audit is historical. It's something that's already happened.
Right.
But what are the indicators
that something is
something
going
went wrong with Nairobi City County? What happened that 20 billion could have been misappropriated? I think for me, it is a matter of their representation of figures,
right,
and they need to look at that. And I'm not saying Governor Kidero is clean. I don't know that there's a governor who's clean, but we need to have that done again.
Right.
I don't know if they're overwhelmed, the auditing sector.
But also what we saw the members of, the Jubilee Coalition in the County Assembly saying that this cannot be absolutely, untrue, because this, took a look at the papers from 2013 up to now. So then that was the argument that this would have made sense. What do you think?
I think that every time a red flag is raised by the Auditor General, somebody rubbishes the work he's doing. And either this man is the most incompetent auditor in the whole country, or there's something seriously wrong going on in all these sectors. So I think that I agree with Lydia that this has to be looked into, and they need to come to, they need to account for their figures. It is possible, and it is possible to misappropriate 20 billion. That is what misappropriation means. Right. That you used this money for something, for a purpose
not what it was actually allocated.
Yes, what you claim that you're using it for, you didn't use it for. So actually, it's possible.
Not that it's lost, but
yeah. That is just not,
right.
Just not used right. And so we go back, and like Lydia said, we go back, we look, what did you use this money for that you weren't supposed to use it for, or that you had decided, in your previous budget, you had said you'd use it for this, but then you decide to use it for something else. Perhaps that's where the problem is, And I think that it's no longer acceptable for us to hear from politicians rubbishing what the Auditor General does without giving us a clarification on the matter.
In fact, just to say, Betty, what needs to be done is that they need to the county government needs to come back with an explanation.
Exactly.
And they need to come back and show their expenditure.
To answer to the queries.
Yes,
And I
to
think
answer the queries. And I think that's what they need to do.
Bigger tragedy is what he said he's spending the money on. 18 billion to pay workers, 6 billion for operational costs, 0 shillings for development.
Right. So we're just running. We're
we're just
running
the
costs.
county.
Yeah. A very expensive
A
county.
very expensive one at that. Well, now on to matters in Kirinyaga. When former devolution CS vacated office to pursue lighter duty, she said that she would take up such lighter duties as the president would see fit to give her. As we now know, she's in the running for the Kirinyaga gubernatorial seat on a JP ticket, where she will go head-to-head with former opposition stalwart Martha Karua. Both women recently found themselves in the presence of the head of state when he visited their county. According to them, both a hearty greeting, which for the women, which way forward for the women who would be Kirinyaga governor. Right. Anne Waiguru, interesting bedfellows that we have right here. And when the president visited Kirinyaga and hugged Karua, that was the hug that was seen across the country because he was welcoming her back into the fold. And yet right by her side was former CS Anne Waiguru, which begs the question, where this county is going and which political alliances are being formed and unformed as we move forward. What do you ladies think about both of the ladies being in the presence of the president? And keep in mind that the deputy president had been throwing pot shots at Waiguru. So what does this portend for our political future? I think I'll start with you.
With me?
Yes.
Okay. I think first I want to say that I'm very proud to see these women fighting it out for the governor's seat, because most women are too scared to go out there and get their hands dirty. And Waiguru is not taking, what did she say, light duties?
Lighter duties.
Lighter duties. Politics is not light duties. And that's what she's not doing. But Martha Karua would probably need to re-strategize and look at her political party. We've seen what happens if you're in the wrong political party, even if you're the best candidate. You might be the best, but because of the political party, we've just talked about Kenyans not being, not demanding what they should demand from their politicians. And so they know Martha Karua is good. She's performed before. She's even vied for presidency. She has everything it takes. She was the only man in the cabinet, in Kibaki's cabinet.
Which is not necessarily a compliment, but...
No.
We'll talk about that.
Yes, but whatever they gave her, you know, she's held her own for a long time. And because of her party, she was booed. And Waiguru, on the other
Because she
hand,
was being asked to not run on her...
To change and go on to the Jubilee party, so that she's with the president in his party.
Yes.
And she's sticking to her guns and saying, I have a party of my own, and I want to vie on my party. And Waiguru has decided to, you know, also go out there and see what politics can do for her. This for her is, I think, the first time in the political field. She's been an officer all the time, and
She's
routine.
been a technocrat.
Everything has been routine. You know, come to work at 8 and leave at 5.
With a few exceptions of controversies here and there.
But you know, the controversies are within the routine. She's never had to dirty her hands.
But we must keep in mind that she comes to this position under a shadow of controversy. We can't run away from that. And Martha Karua was in the opposition and now has moved to the ruling party. So I think there's a bit of a credibility issue for both these ladies. And it makes this an interesting seat to watch.
For me, I think that we have all forgotten there's an incumbent in Kirinyaga who is a man. And
I think this is a more interesting race to watch.
who is a man? Okay, I'll have to finish what
I'll let you finish.
Okay, so there's an incumbent who is a man. And Waiguru has to contest with that incumbent for the Jubilee Party seat. I mentioned that the locking-in principle, which we had discussed with you here, the locking-in principle makes it very difficult for women to stand against men. So if Waiguru does not make the vote, so she does not make the nomination,
so that we could be misguided by just watching this two strong women going against each other.
Her ambitions could be totally, you know, tanked by that. This this is why Karua is completely politically right and very smart to stick with NARC Kenya, where she knows that she'll get the ticket.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
Fine. We have to move this conversation forward now. And more than 2 decades into a mandate he promised would last 1 billion years, Gambian President Yahya Jammeh last week shocked his West African nation by accepting defeat at the ballot box and promising to retire to live as an ordinary farmer. Jammeh's 22 years in power makes him a relative newcomer compared to Yoweri Museveni, Uganda's president for 30 years, Omar al-Bashir, who has ruled Sudan for 27, and Robert Mugabe, who has led Zimbabwe to independence 36 years ago. Now, still, could the winds of change be blowing through the continent? Now, of course, this was quite something when we saw the Gambian president accepting defeat. Do you think this could be a tune that could, reflect in all these other dynasties, so to call them that?
Well, there's hope. There's definitely hope, because 1 billion years has suddenly become, how many years did you say, Sharon?
22 years.
Yes, so, but there's Dos Santos who's also standing down next year. And Ghana is in an election right now, and the incumbent might be beaten by his opposers. So perhaps the winds of change, African voters are waking up and seeing that they can actually make change at the ballot. And leaders are feeling like, we don't need to. Of course, they've made millions by the time they're leaving. Let's just put that in. They don't have to stay in power forever.
But of course, the democracy has to be a functioning one for, you could have all the intentions to have this changed, but if it's not a functioning...
I think that we're forgetting the sort of contentious political climate Gambia has had in the past few years. Jammeh, that's his name, yeah? Jammeh has had a lot of opposition to his sort of style of ruling.
Right.
So the kind of pressure he must have been under to just concede was, extraordinary. And the same with the other, leaders who promised to step down but never will.
Right.
As opposed to Yoweri Museveni, who, despite all the pressure, which isn't as excruciating as Jammeh would have faced, he will, stick to his guns, and the same with Mugabe. So you have a weaker opposition in both Uganda and Zimbabwe as compared to the Gambia. So I personally don't believe it's necessarily a wind of change or a change of heart from these dictators. Rather, it's a change of the sort of pressure being exerted by the opposition in these countries, which goes to your point about the sort of the nature of the democracy that is being practiced in this country. That Gambia seems to have a much stronger democracy than Uganda, at least in practice.
All right. So we want to sample a few tweets, of course, as we come to the end of the show. And we had asked, of course, our Twitter poll tonight was based on the health situation in the country as the health workers have downed their tools. And we asked you whether you are satisfied with the president's response to the health workers' strike. And just to sample a few of your tweets here, we have Eric Mugabe saying that the government is not serious about the health workers' strike. We have Thibaut Courtois saying that the president should ask Treasury to pay up for health workers to go back to work and save lives. David Makia says that the government response has never been satisfactory in such matters. A huge paycheck to health workers would be the solution, and that would be the last one I take tonight. So many thanks for engaging us on our Twitter poll tonight, and of course for watching. And we have come to a close of such a lovely show we had tonight, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. We had Lydia Nanea, who's a political activist. We have Betty Waitherero, political communications consultant, and of course,
Julie Masiga.
Right. Have a good night, and many thanks for watching.
Thank you.